Sactown Sports.
Well, the NFL season is nearly here when the new quarterback tiers arrive in the Athletic, and the 2024 quarterback tiers are here. Panel consisting of 7 GMs, 8 head coaches, 12 coordinators, 12 executives, 8 assistant coaches, and 3 involved in coaching analytics. And every year, this is put together by our next guest, outstanding senior NFL writer for The Athletic, Pro Football Hall of Fame selector, longtime friend of the show, the one and only Mike Sando. How are you today, Mike?
Pretty good. You forgot Sacramento native right there.
There you go.
Snap, yeah?
Yes, Sacramento native Mike Sando. The new tiers are here, and I'm just wondering, Mike, what about the results this year? What, if anything, jumped out at you as a surprise?
Well, only 3 quarterbacks in the top tier is very unusual. That hasn't happened since like 2016, so I didn't necessarily see that coming. And some of that is Aaron Rodgers not being in there. I don't know if that's surprising, but people were all over the map with him. He's always been, near unanimous tier 1. So, and then, I think another thing that stands out is if you go down to the top of tier 3 and you see Tua Tagovailoa and Trevor Lawrence, those guys just signed for like $55 million and they're not even in the top 2 tiers. So that's pretty good work too, if you can get that.
Hey, Mike, I'm looking at the tiers here, and I'm looking at Jordan Love versus Tua Tagovailoa. Both voting average 2.5. What was the line of demarcation there? How did we decide that, all right, tier 3 began at 15 and tier 2 ended at 14?
Well, so the average vote of Love is 2.48, which would be better than 2.5, and Tua's is 2.52. So it's really, we're talking like a vote here there. So, sometimes guys, like at one time, there was one year where Jimmy Garoppolo was like exactly a 2.5 or something, and so I think I bumped him into the bottom of tier 2 because he might have had more votes in tier 2 than in any other category, but there was like maybe he got a 3 or a 4, or whatever he got. So it's close. They're splitting a little bit of hairs there, but that's how you do it.
Mike Sando with us, talking about his quarterback tiers in the Athletic. Brock Purdy at 12, tier 2, jumped up 2 tiers. Of course, the debate with him, the conversation has always been, is it him? Is it the system? Based on these results, Mike, can we say that the split on Purdy is less pronounced, but still there as far as whether it's him or the system?
Well, yes, but if you're consistently really productive, you're going to get some credit for that, right? I don't think anybody's going to just say it's all the system or all of the players around him. Certainly that helps, and we've seen some of these guys like Jared Goff has been in his career at different extremes. Really bad teams, he looked terrible. Really good teams, he looked good. But so far, Purdy has really only looked good, and the reason he wasn't higher last year was he had only done it for a part of a season. So now, yes, I mean most people when they design the ideal quarterback, they're not going to design Brock Purdy, right? He's a 7th-round pick for a reason. He doesn't wow you physically with some amazing talents, but he plays well consistently. Some of that sure is the system around him, and that's why he's not, even higher than he is. But if he were to keep producing the way he's producing, I think he would only climb. He would only climb.
Hey, Mike, I'm looking at tier 2. I think you got 11 quarterbacks listed in tier 2. I think it was. I counted. And when I look at the tiers, I view a guy like Lamar Jackson, and you got him there at the top of tier 2. But then you got, a guy like Kirk Cousins in tier 2 as well. From a reader's standpoint, how should we interpret that? Is Kirk Cousins and Lamar Jackson on the same kind of level? How should readers interpret that?
Yeah, you got to be able to differentiate between a low 2 and a high 2, and Lamar almost can't be closer to being a 1. Right. The only reason that Lamar Jackson doesn't get a 1 is because when his team absolutely has to pass the ball, it doesn't always look good. In fact, it usually doesn't. We saw it in the Kansas City game. So the voters are torn on that, though, because he's so good. He's so dynamic that it feels wrong to not give him a 1. But I've also asked the voters who helped come up with this criteria over the years, this is the definition of tier 1. Carries his team each week. Team wins because of him. Expertly handles pure pass situations. No real holes in his game. It's a tough one for some of these guys who, when you have to pass the ball, they've stumbled. It's been a hard thing for them to do. So I wouldn't harp on it too much with Lamar Jackson because he got 23 votes in tier 1. I mean, he's right there on the cusp. I think what makes it, I do think it's a distinction worth making, though. I think what's nice about this group is that, some of these other guys that have been ahead of him, like Justin Herbert, aren't now. And so there's a group really at the top of tier 2 that you almost might call the 1.5s.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Really.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like down at the bottom, we're kind of getting into 2.5s.
Right.
Like especially Cousins. I mean, I think Cousins has always been right at the top of 3 or the very bottom of 2. And then I think people felt like a couple things with Kirk Cousins. He was playing great ball last year before he got hurt. And then he has done a better job probably just kind of standing tough in the pocket. That was always a knock on him, that he just kind of crumbled sometimes when the pressure was around him. I think he's done a better job of that. Voters think he's done a better job of that. So he's come up. But yes, there's definitely some distinction within the second tier.
Mike Sando is with us, senior writer for The Athletic, and his quarterback tiers results are in The Athletic today. Wanted to ask you about Russell Wilson, and he's 22nd here. He's right at the bottom of tier 3. What has happened to him? I mean, how did he go from one of the most proficient and prolific passers in the NFL to where he is now? What's been his single biggest issue, Mike?
Well, definitely some aging with the athleticism going away. Some, he always was a little unconventional and could get away with it. Yeah. I think he used to have a lot of negative plays and take a lot of sacks, but he really pulled, some amazing stuff that almost no one else could do, where he would turn his back to the pass rusher and then look over one shoulder and spin the other way and then make some pass 25 yards down the field. He's not doing those plays anymore. So he's kind of reduced. He still has the negative plays, takes too many sacks, but there's just fewer of the really spectacular plays. And there's really not even that many, especially good plays. So I think he's really lost kind of his stinger a little bit, if you will, just in terms of what does he do this dynamic right now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hey, Mike, who are some of the biggest movers? Who made the biggest leap? Was it Brock?
Yeah. Brock Purdy and Jordan Love each went up 13 spots, and the biggest decline was Trevor Lawrence down 7. Trevor Lawrence had kind of come up into tier 2, and then after last year, people tapped the brakes a little bit, and we'll see. I think it's a big year for him.
Hey, let me follow that up, because you mentioned some of the contracts these quarterbacks are getting that, aren't upper echelon contracts. Do you feel like, what do you make of the contracts being handed out to quarterbacks? It seems like teams are sort of backed into a corner. Like, even if you don't have a tier 1 or even an upper tier 2 guy, case in point, Trevor Lawrence, you still got to pay these quarterbacks, a la Daniel Jones a couple years ago with the Giants. What do you think about that?
The thing is, though, they don't have to do it. They just keep doing it. Where's Jordan Love and Tua going to go?
Right.
There's like they're free agents and can just go sign somewhere. These teams are not willing to play a little bit of hardball to save $10 million a year or whatever. And so maybe they just feel like, you know what, let's just buy the piece, right? We're talking up our guy in our locker room. And so he's our guy. Let's go.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen a couple times now where even general managers who've done that and had to back out of it. The Philly had to do it. The Rams had to do it. These guys kind of survive still. And so I think internally the messaging and what you're telling your owner about your guy, let's just say if you were Chris Greer, who's the GM of the Dolphins, and you drafted Tua Tagovailoa, and you kind of know he's good, but he's not $53 million good. Are you going to tell your owner, yeah, look, this guy's not that good? I mean, he's good, but he's not that good. And they'd be like, wait a minute, you drafted him 5th overall, right? Can we win the Super Bowl with him? I thought you said we could win the Super Bowl, right? Mm-hmm. Couldn't you imagine those types of conversations going on behind the scenes? So it could be easier for some of these decision makers. I'm not saying that happened in Miami specifically, but it could be easier for some of these decision makers to just be like, hey, this is our guy. We hit on him. Let's go.
Mm-hmm. If you haven't already, you got to check it out in The Athletic, this year's new quarterback tiers. It's really fascinating stuff from, of course, Sacramento's own Mike Sando. Mike, great catching up with you. We appreciate it. Hope to talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
All right, Mike.
Yeah, when we come back, Hey, we're still reeling from some of the names on this honorable mention list. The Kings' top 40 players. We'll dive back into that next on Sactown Sports.
Sacramento, Dirk Bentley's coming to town.